Okay. Contemplation of mental objects. Now this one goes into a considerable amount of detail. This is the contemplation of mental objects. Mental objects. Mental objects. Mental objects is focus of mind. Okay, and we get distracted with that quite often. So if you manage to go through the body feeling of consciousness, you've got this kind of light state, you either recorded it or you're going through it. When you get to mental objects, okay, so what am I going to attend to? If I'm going to attend to anything, what am I going to attend to? And then these things are the things you're meant to attend to. The first one is the 5 hindrances. The second, the 5 aggregates of clinging, whatever they are. Then the 6 internal and the 6 external sense bases. Going back to the body a bit there. Then the 7 factors of enlightenment. And finally the 4 noble truths. Okay, so there's 5 different kind of things to go through. I'm just going to go through just an example of each one of these. The 5 hindrances. How does a monk live contemplating mental objects in the mental objects of the 5 hindrances? So that's a mental object. Okay, that's an object out there, but the fact that you imagine it means that it's a mental object. But what is the thing you're looking at? Is it a word? No. Is it a physical object? No. Is it another person? No. It's an aspect within us. Okay, but it's as an object of thought. What are the 5 hindrances? So there are certain things within us which might cause a problem. We start with the hindrances first, presumably to overcome them. Here in Monk's a Monk, when sense desire is present, kind of like one of these, but it's the desire for it. When sense desire is present, knows there is sense desire in me. Or when sense desire is not present, he understands there is no sense desire in me. He knows the language for this is phenomenal. Type it up here somewhere. He knows how the arising of the non-arisen sense desire comes to be. He knows how the abandoning of the arisen sense desire comes to be. And he knows how the non-arising in the future of the abandoned sense desire comes to be. And that's quite intricate. When I discovered this, I was a little bit older, okay, and I was like, this is phenomenal intricacy. What on earth does it mean? And if you're trying to understand it as a thing, you're not going to get anywhere. Well, you could, but it's a lot of categories of words. We're not interested in the words. We're interested in the actual sensation. If we go back to this one, okay, so we know there is sense desire in me. So once the feeling or sensation of sense is in, it's like minimum, you're like, oh, I'm feeling it, oh, it's gone. Okay. But here's the point. We're trying to draw attention to at what point am I aware of it? Okay, and then it goes. The question is, so we know when we're experiencing it and when we're not. Before and after. So when we're not experiencing it, we're like, and then when we experience it, we go, got it. But what happens before you become consciously aware of it? Or maybe after. But we're looking at the bit before. He knows how the arising of the non-arisen sense desire comes to be. The arising, there's a bit beforehand. That bit there. As it arises, before you've noticed it. Before you've noticed it. So this, in fact, is consciousness. This bit is conscious awareness. In this period here, you're aware of it, and then it's gone. But it starts before you're conscious. And the chances are, not to confuse this thing, but there's another wave, okay, of another thing, and then you're onto this thing. So you're after one thing, then another thing. But because we've tidied, we've settled down our body, we've settled down our feelings, we've settled down our consciousness, we've got a very light touch, we're saying, right, we're going to look at one thing, and before that one thing, before we're conscious, so this is pre. We're looking at pre-conscious state. Okay. He knows how the arising of the non-arisen sense desire comes to be. You kind of notice before it arises. He knows how the abandoning of the arisen sense desire comes to be. How does this happen? That bit there. The abandoning of it. Okay. How the abandoning of the arisen desire comes to be. And he knows how the non-arising in the future of the abandoned sense desire comes to be. It doesn't rise again. So if you're aware that it arises, the state of arise, let's say, arising, and then you become aware of its disappearing off, you get to the point, because that's the only place that you can actually do it. You can't do it there, because it's already happened. Okay, so you're kind of backing into this one. You're backing into the sense of before you notice it. So for example, if you thought about, if you're looking at a dark sky, and you know the way you start seeing a star, and as soon as you start seeing a star, you go, oh, star. However, there was some light coming from that star into your eye, but it wasn't quite sufficient to trigger your photon, the rod, or whatever it is that's going in the back of the eye, and not enough signals going into the brain for it to go, there is a star there. Okay, but once you actually, your eye goes up, there it is, and then when you see it, it's actually quite bright. So why hadn't you seen it beforehand? And maybe if you tracked your eyes, oh, there's a star. And you hadn't seen it from the peripheral, but when you look at it, it's like, oh, there's the star. So it's kind of drawing our attention to our increasing our sensitivity. And the only way we can increase that sensitivity is we're not bothered about what the effects of these things are on consciousness. We're not bothered about the feelings of it, and we're not definitely bothered by the coarse body sensations. In order to kind of soften into the preconditions of our awareness of, in this case, sense desire. The other ones are anger. So you can kind of like test it with anger. So, oh, I'm angry. So you think about something, angry. Okay, I got it. Now I was thinking of an image, and then I start to feel it. Okay, because I'm not really paying attention to it, I let it go, so it's quite narrow, it doesn't get to a maximum. Okay, and there it goes. Now, I'm here, time is moving on. So although, if I meditate on this, and so then think about something, and I become sensitive to when it arises, because it's in the process of arising, I can't escape from it. I might be able to reduce this bump, lower and lower. That's slightly different. What we're doing, what it's suggesting is, attend to this bit too. The fact that it disappears off until there's nothing. So it's almost like, actually the best way for this, for me, in terms of practice, is the Buddhists have this thing where they have a bell. Bing. And they go bing. And they have a beautiful singing bowls. And they knock them and it's like ping. And it goes away. And it's this curve here. It's like bing, and then it goes. And if you focus in on it, it's like the sound, the sound, the sound, the sound, the sound. And you improve your ability to follow it into nothing. Okay? And if you attend to that ability, for you to just attend to nothing, that dissolution, the abandoning of the arisen sense desire comes to be. And that's the only place that's where you're attempting to maintain, not attempting to maintain. Because once it starts to arise, you notice it's arisen, it's like, well, we're on to another little arisal. But if you're attentive there, it's only this kind of, the fact that it's disappearing off until he knows how the non-arising in the future, and you know it's not going to arise. It's not going to arise. I'm not going to get another one of these bumps. Remarkable. Now it's either because it's so small, it's never even going to approach into consciousness, or it just never arises at all. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what the two are there. Now you do the same with anger. So there's 5 hindrances. One is, shall we do those? Mental objects. 5. I'm going into this in detail because I haven't looked at this forever and it's incredible stuff. I mean, incredible stuff. But people won't probably want to go into this level of detail. Probably leave this actually for the Buddhist one, but this is, the thing that we're going to be doing is going to be simpler than this. This is like to get an idea of how challenging it can be, but to notice the techniques, it helps us get the idea of techniques so that we can apply a simpler technique, let's say. So the 5 hindrances are sense, it's going to take a little while to get you coming out of this thing. Okay, sense, no. I don't think we're going to get much ink out of this. Let's try another one. Let's try black. I'm convinced by this. We'll see. Sense desire. Next is anger. Let's just do it this way. Anger. Sloth and torpor. Torpor. Laziness, basically. Agitation. And scruples. That's the one that bothers me. And doubt. Remember that. Descartes. I doubt. Cogito. I doubt, therefore I am. So when doubt is present, there's doubt in me. When doubt is not present, he knows there's no doubt in me. He knows how the arising of the non-arisen doubt comes to be. This bit. And he knows how the abandoning of the arisen doubt comes to be. And he knows how the non-arising in the future of the abandoned state comes to be. So you're tending to this, but to get kind of to get into that level of close to zero. And so when it disappears off, you are approaching that close to zero thing and maintaining that state of zero. And thus he lives contemplating mental objects and mental objects internally, where he lives contemplating external objects. He lives contemplating mental objects and mental objects externally, or he lives contemplating mental objects and mental objects internally and externally. He lives contemplating origination factors in mental objects. He lives contemplating dissolution factors in mental objects. Or he lives contemplating origination and dissolution factors in mental objects. Both. Or, I like that. Or, you got the choice. Or, the mindfulness is established with the thought, mental objects exist. It's exactly the same formula. Okay? With the thought, mental objects exist to the extent necessary, just for knowledge and mindfulness. And he lives detached and clings to naught in the world. Wow. And that's, the monk lives contemplating mental objects and the mental objects of the 5 hindrances. That's pretty cool. So you're effectively now, whatever it is that these things are, we're aware of them, great. We're aware of them, great. We're aware of them, great. Now we're actually attending to the mental objects themselves, and here we are turning them into zero. Okay, this is all about finding them and kind of nullifying them so they do not arise. So the 5 hindrances: sense desire, anger, laziness, agitation, doubt. Gone. Wow. Then it's the 5 hindrances. The 5 aggregates. 5 aggregates of clinging. 5 aggregates of clinging. What do you think these are? These get in the way, so they're called hindrances. They kind of prevent you from getting to the next stage. Let's see, we've gone through those. Now it's the 5 aggregates of clinging. So this is things that bother you, that come out of body maybe, and mind and so on. But these are now aggregates of clinging. Something makes us cling. What are these 5 objects? I'm going to list them. Material form. Here in monks, a monk thinks, thus is material form, thus is the arising of material form, and thus is the disappearance of material form. Arising, this is it, and disappearance of material form. Thus is feeling, this is the arising of feeling, and that is disappearing. So the ones are form, feeling, perception, formulations, I think that's thoughts, and then consciousness. Actually, I do remember another term that Buddhists have for the 5 aggregates of clinging are the skanda, I think they're called. That is the piles, which corresponds to some extent to body. Form is just like the, and I remember reading, was it Wilson? And he was talking about a thing called Consilience. Consilience was quite an informative book. I've read very few books, and Consilience was one of them. And form, feeling, okay, perception. So the other ways of thinking about this is the scan. Actually, maybe this is going to be somewhere else. Actually, 5 scan. No, I think this is it. All right, okay, this is it. So normally the way I remember these is form, sense, then perception, then volition, and consciousness. Okay, and I think this guy Wilson put these in some kind of sequence, which of biological evolution, and it's quite a nice thing to think that there's aspect dimensionality and emergent levels, and in social and sciences they call it superveillance. I think it is supervenance, and we're talking about emergent levels. And in science, there's very great difficulty dealing with the concept, with the process of emergence. So autopoiesis, for example, in biology, by Varela, somebody in Varela, I keep on forgetting the first guy's name. Okay, so form is basically DNA, it's just a chemical, protein, it's just a shape. And then sense is an emergent level where an amoeba goes, oh, it's salty, and it goes off in that direction. Okay, and so that's sense. So we have form, we do have physical form, the movement of our bodies, but we also have incredible billions, trillions of structural forms in us. And we also have sense, to form our eye, complex sense. But we're not talking about just the sense of light and photons and the brain, similar to like an amoeba. We're talking about levels of complexity where we have perception. Because perception is there's something external to us. Okay, so for example, a flower goes, oh, look, there's the sun, and it tracks the sun. So there's a perception of something external to itself. Sense is just going, it's salty, I'll go in the direction of saltiness. It's just drawn towards saltiness. Or if it's too salty, it goes away from saltiness. So that's just a sense, and then the action that might occur from it. Perception is there's a world external to myself. Okay? And so there's external to the boundary itself, and it's not just moving because of the boundary interaction. There is something external to itself, another animal, the sun, or some kind of source, or something or other. So that's more like plants. Volition, we're talking plants and like insects, I think actually. Volition is, now we're talking about, when you're looking at a dog or a cat or a cow or any kind of like fairly complex animal, mammal definitely, or dolphin or a sea lion we saw the other day actually, a seal in the sea when we were on the south coast. And there is some kind of volition, there's like a choice going on here. There's like, I'm going to go this way, I'm going to go that way. There's no metacognition to it, but there's definitely a being which is making a decision where it's going. Okay, there's there's a level of complexity which is beyond like a tree. And then consciousness. Consciousness as in self-reflection, as in what it is that you and I are doing. And these are the 5 piles. So form, feeling or sense, perception, formulations as in volition. So, dogs do this kind of dreaming thing. It appears just like we do. And in order for that to occur, it means to have an imagination in some form. It has knowledge. Okay? It's got something already in its existence, so that when it wakes up, it goes, oh yeah, I'm going to get some food from that guy. Okay? It's not like, what's that guy? What's going on? There's no just like a perception, oh, I've got to do this thing. There's just this form there. It is, I know this guy. Oh, I don't know this guy. Wait a minute. Who is this guy? And so there's what is not there. Okay, what is not there? There's some kind of knowledge of something, and therefore that's compared to what actually is. This one, consciousness, that is definitely something to do with absence. That would be my guess. Okay, consciousness. As far as I can understand it, it's to do with what is not there, and imagining something that is not there and then acting on it. Might be volition, I don't know, we'll see. So, material form, and it does exactly the same. Internally, externally, origination and dissolution, and that these forms of clinging exist. Okay? What does it say? Contemplate. Mental objects exist. Mental objects exist. These exist. I notice these aspects within me of kind of just structure, sensation, perception of an external world, various thoughts and intentionality that I have, and the fact that I'm actually conscious here, self-reflective, and it just exists. Okay, without detachment, with detachment, without it lives detached and clings to naught in the world. Extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness. Detached, clings to naught in the world. Okay, that's good. Good. We're happy with that, are we? Great. So then we're on to the 6 internal and 6 external sense bases. 6 internal and external sense bases. What does that mean? It means that we have the sound that's coming in at us and the fact that we make sense of it. Okay, so we've got some complex psychological phenomenon to be able to interpret that sound as, oh, it's a sound. And eventually going, okay, it's tapping on the wall. Okay, words are way more complicated than that, but just that basic thing. So here in a monk knows the I and the visual forms, and the theta that arises dependent on both, the I and the forms. So you've got to have a source, a sensation source, let's say external, and then it's our ability to go, and detect that source, light, eyeball, and both are required. Both are required to go, I can see. Okay? He knows how the arising of the non-arisen fetter comes to be. The arising of the non-arisen fetter. The fact that this is a pen, that you know this is a pen. Wait, what's happening before I can see that that's a pen? It's like when I woke up, as I mentioned before, and you're looking around the room, and you're like, where am I? Okay, so something's happening before you go, I'm here, I'm in this room. And being sensitive to that. He knows how the abandoning of the arisen fetter comes to be, as you fall asleep, probably. And he knows how the non-arising of the abandoned fetter comes to be, abandoning of that. And you can understand, if you can do that with sounds, visual and sound, and taste and smell, you're kind of getting close to what's going to happen when you die. It's not going to arise again. Okay? And so this is all practice in a way for non-returning. So we're talking about sounds, yeah. So all the senses that we're used to, taste, tongue, eye. So it's the relationship of the physical body with an external reality of some kind or other. He knows how the rising of the bending of the right, and it comes to be mental objects. Okay, now why 6? Does it actually talk about the 6th one? Not quite. I don't think it does. I think I've either missed that or I kind of skipped over something. Nose and smells. Tongue and flavours. Body and tactile objects. The mind and mental objects. So the 6th one is the mind and mental object. What we're literally doing now. So you can imagine that the eyes have got some kind of complex brain structure which is conducting this kind of like analysis of whatever it is that we see. The light comes in, oh look, it's a pen. And it's conditional on both. Quite a complicated structure going on there, of course. And I'm sure the Buddhists go into like great detail as to what that might be. But remember, this is all phenomenological experience. This is not a scientific external observation. This is all from within one's own mind. We're conducting this experiment internally within our mind. So to have these, this complex structure, the hearing complex structure, the smell, the nose, the taste, touch, nose, smell, flavours, and tongue, and touch. Okay, all of our bodies. And what they're saying is the 6th one is more like a thought. So there's a thought, and I'm aware of that thought. There's a complex structure of thinking which processes the thought. So for example, if I say pen, you say pen and ink, and so on and so forth, those associations. And those associations are processed by a thought center. So in the same way, there's kind of like a sight center, and there's like a hearing center, it's a center of a complex thing. So there's part of our brain that's somehow or other making sense of these words. Okay, that's an example. So this word is not just a matter of sound. There's a kind of meaning thing, and then another meaning thing, and then we're compiling this meaning thing. And that meaning thing is being processed by what it's suggesting as a thought center. And that's what we're examining right now. So it gets a bit meta. 5 hindrances, 5 aggregates, and now we're looking at, wait a minute, 5 senses, sense bases, and also our thought base. Right. And we're looking at exactly the same process. And then we're eventually saying that these exist. Exactly the same. Mental objects exist. Remember, these are all just mental objects. All mental objects. Psychic structures within us. They're based on our neuron structure and the electromagnetic wave patterns and everything else, and goodness knows what. And then maybe emergent levels of that, kind of correlating to this, and we're going, oh, and we're aware of these things from within. Okay? And it does exactly the same. Mental objects exist to the extent necessary just for knowledge and mindfulness. And he lives detached and clings to naught in the world. And finally, 7 factors, no, not finally, 4th, the 7 factors of enlightenment. The 7 factors of enlightenment. Now we're talking. Okay, so we've gone through all this. We've really nullified the hindrances, the aggregates, and we're like, okay, there's no arising of any of this. And the sense bases, there's no arising and dissolution of anything because it's just like not happening. Okay, I've got down there, nothing's bothering us. And now we consider the 7 factors. So our mind is basically clean. So when they talked about the blank slate, educationalists talk about the blank slate. If only kids were blank slates. They kind of are when they're babies. But these are the 7 factors of enlightenment now. So you've now cleaned your slate. Just like this wall, it's just like clean. So no body, no feeling, no consciousness, none of this bothersome mental object. What pops up in the mind? And in order for this to occur, you've learnt the sutra so that even if you get to that point, you think about this. Okay? Remember, they didn't have any recorded devices. They might have had somebody talk, but because you've got somebody talking, it means it's external to you. So it's very difficult to introduce this back then. You had to memorize it. Whereas nowadays, you stick on your headphones, you listen to this, and it's your voice. So you've recorded it, it's your voice in it. You're going through this, you might be going too fast for you because you just recorded it. But, you know, it gives you a kind of the path. And then it gets to the 7 factors. Okay, what are the 7 factors of enlightenment? Because that's what the Buddhists are keen on. This they call enlightenment. That's the whole joy and the direction of it. How does a monk live in the mental objects of enlightenment? Let's